Well, I remember the first big fight Heidi and I had. The first year that we were married, we lived in an 800 square foot mansion. The kitchen was so small we could only put 2 chairs at the kitchen table because the washer and dryer hookup were also in the kitchen. If guests came over, we moved the table into the living room so that we could eat. We had a kitchen utility closet. As with most marriages, it was a lot of adjusting that first year. Heidi and I have 2 different family backgrounds. She doesn't ever remember her parents fighting. They're quiet, laid-back people. My family, well, let's just say volume was an important part of any discussion. Often the fight itself was more important than the resolution. And while I don't remember what we were fighting about, I do remember the fight. During dinner, I was quiet and sullen. That's the best way to communicate something's wrong with someone. Heidi was oblivious. We cleared the table and the dryer of the dishes, and at that point, I'd had enough. I decided to share with her exactly how I felt, exactly what was going on. I raised my voice to prove a point. I moved my hands back and forth, and then my wife did the unthinkable. After all of my planning for this moment, I was not expecting what happened next. She looked at me and said, "Randy, I'm sorry. I had no idea I had done that." That's right. My wife had the audacity to apologize. How dare she? She didn't get defensive. She didn't raise her voice. I stood in the middle of the living room / hallway / kitchen / utility closet, and she just walked away. I had come prepared for World War III, and she surrendered without a shot. Where had she learned this tactic for fighting? Now I was mad at her for not being mad at me. I said, "Fine, if that's how you're going to play." I pull out the secret weapon. So I walked outside without telling her, and I waited for that woman to come to me. At the time, we lived in Springfield, Missouri, and it was winter. It was freezing cold. When you're mad and in a fight, you don't think of logical things like jackets and coats. You just act. So I stood out in the cold and the dark just to prove a point. Heidi's good. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. At that point, I began to feel stupid. Then the door opened. Heidi said, "Randy, are you outside? What exactly are you doing?" I said, "Yes, I'm outside. I'm waiting out here for you." And she said, "How long have you been out here? And more importantly, why are you out here?" The whole time I was outside, Heidi had no idea I was out there. How she missed me in the 800 square foot apartment, I still don't know to this day. So much for me proving a point. I felt like a fool. I felt like a fool because I was. I'm telling you this not because I'm proud, but because it shows how foolish we are when anger controls our life. When you lose your temper, you think you're making a point when the truth is you're probably just standing out in the cold. You only live once. Make it count. Don't let anyone or anger mess you up along life's journey. Are you an angry person? Do you lose your temper and the control of the words that come out of your mouth? Do you wish you could just go back and undo slamming that door at work? Or that moment you smarted off to your teacher? Do you fantasize about how to get even with people? If the answer was yes to any of those, you have an anger problem. And I hope you realize just how dangerous a spot you're in. Last week we started talking about the book of Esther. It's a story filled with intrigue and heroes, plot twists, and even villains. I hope you've enjoyed reading the Esther study guide with us as we've studied this book. But let me give you some background on Esther. Many years before the story began, the nation of Israel had been divided into 2 kingdoms, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Now, most of the time, these kingdoms, they didn't honor God. And as a result, for several hundred years, God judged their disobedience. They were taken captive by armies from the east. Babylonian, Assyrian, and Persian empires conquered them and ruled them. In the book of Esther, we pick up the story with the Persians in charge and the Jews living in exile. They hadn't returned home, and they were treated as foreigners and subjected to cruelty and prejudice. People often hated them. Persian empire was vast, powerful, and feared. And the king of Persia was a guy named Xerxes, a feared warrior, ruthless, intolerant, evil dictator. Esther was Xerxes' queen when Haman, the villain in our story, tried to kill all Jews. Esther had kept the fact that she was Jewish a secret, but her cousin Mordecai told her, "You are our only hope. You have to go to the king and you have to stop Haman." And Esther convinced the king to help the Jews. And instead of them being killed, well, they beat their enemies, and Haman was defeated. This guy, Haman, he's an interesting man. He was wealthy, powerful, and a man whose anger controlled him. It cost him everything, and we can learn a little bit about anger from his life. Let's look. Esther chapter 3, verse 1. Sometime later, King Xerxes promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, over all other nobles, making him the most powerful official in the empire. All the king's officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. Haman's the second most powerful man in the world, and everyone bowed down to him. Well, almost everyone. Let's keep reading. But Mordecai refused to bow down or show him respect. Mordecai was a faithful follower of God, and he refused to bow down to Haman. But that didn't go over well with Haman at all. Verse number 5, and when Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or pay homage to him, Haman was filled with fury. And the end of verse 6 says, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews, the people of Mordecai. And here we've learned our first lesson about angry people from the life of Haman. An angry person is easily offended. When Mordecai refused to bow to Haman, he was filled with fury. He believed he deserved respect. He should be honored. The Bible says Mordecai refused to pay homage to Haman. Now, I think most of us in this room would say, I don't really care if anybody gives me homage. I'm not even sure exactly what homage means, much less someone paying it to me. But paying homage means to publicly show respect and honor. More respect? I bet some of us do want that. And maybe when we don't receive that respect, especially when we think we deserve it, you get angry, you get offended. I travel a lot, so I stay in a lot of hotel rooms. And when I stay at a Hampton Inn, as a reward for my repeat business, I get a free bottle of water. It's just a 99-cent bottle of Dasani water, but I love that bottle of water. When I check into the hotel next to someone doesn't have the status as me, and they give me my bottle of water and they don't get one, I just look at them in disdain. I'm special. I have a 99-cent bottle of water. It's a free bottle of water. I love that bottle of water and everything it represents. One night I checked into the hotel and they didn't give me my bottle of water. Frustrated, I asked why, and the lady at the desk said, "We don't do that at this hotel." And I told her, "Well, yes you do. My status guarantees me a free bottle of water." She said again, "Not at this hotel." I couldn't believe it. I was offended. I went to my room. I put my bags down. I called Heidi and I griped to her about it. I said, "Can you believe it? My bottle of water. I deserve my bottle of water. They didn't have it when I checked in." And Heidi said, "Well, if you really want a bottle of water, go take $1 and buy one for yourself." I love my wife. But for me, it was the principle. It was my bottle of water. I deserved it. I had earned it. Have you ever thought, do they know who I am? Don't they know who they're dealing with? Maybe for you it was at work, or it could even be with your family, your kids, or your spouse. You expect more respect from them, and when you don't get it, you get offended. That's no way to live. People are going to make mistakes. They're going to do wrong. And when this happens, you choose not to be offended. But Randy, you don't understand what he said. You don't understand what she did. If someone does something to you, you still get to choose how you will respond. It's a choice. Listen to Proverbs chapter 17, verse 9. He who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. You can cover over an offense by choosing not to be offended and instead promoting love. Or you can repeat the offense and create division. Make the decision. It doesn't matter what they do to me. I won't be offended. I won't choose offense. Haman was offended, but he also overreacted. And that's the second thing that angry people do. An angry person overreacts. Mordecai wouldn't bow down to Haman, so Haman decided to kill every Jew in the world. Talk about a little overreacting. Haman went to his friend the king and said, in verse number 8, Xerxes, there's a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the peoples in all provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws. So it is not to the king's profit to tolerate them. If it please the king, let it be decreed that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charge of the king's business, that they may be put into the king's treasuries. Talk about an overreaction. When you overreact, you lose control. In Los Angeles, a few months ago, a motorcycle driver overreacted and was angry at another car. Watch what happened.
Okay, we're stopping.
We are just a few minutes away from opening up the road to a brand new Highway 5. Things out of
Okay, stop.
Former
Call 911.
His road rage led to a multi-car collision and one man in the hospital. Before you say, I'd never do anything as stupid as that, let's check your online postings for a second. A single mom working as a waitress for her second job forgets to fill your tea, and so you post a scathing review of the whole restaurant. Overreaction. A teenager making minimum wage at Walmart gives you the wrong change, so you post a rant on incompetent people. Overreaction. A fake news article about a government program being stopped by a leader who you didn't vote for leads you to launch a conspiracy theory online. Overreaction. If you're easily offended and have no problem sharing your offense with others, not only are you a gossip, you are setting yourself up for a lifetime of rage and overreaction. When bad things happen to you, and they will, don't overreact. Here's what you should do instead. Calm down. Now, I know that is deep theological truth right there. Secrets of the ages I just shared with you, ladies and gentlemen. Calm down. Relax. But for some of you, that might be the best thing you could do today. When Morgan, my daughter, was growing up, she'd get really anxious and nervous, and we sort of came up with this thing that we did to help her calm down. It's a little exercise. When she'd be kind of worked up, I'd look at her and say, all right, breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. And we took our hands side by side, and we'd say this together, and we'd say, calm down. Calm down. Next time you're losing your temper, you're out of control, maybe some of you just ought to calm down. A couple of you had a rough day, so let's do it together. All right, ready? Come on, you knew it was coming. Ready? So in through your nose. Hold it for a second. Out through your mouth. Take your hands up with me. Ready? Say it with me. Calm down. One more time. Calm down. Why did Haman hate the Jews so much? You find the answer in his past. Haman was the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite. Agagites were descendants of Agag, the king of the Amalekites. Amalekites were the enemies of God's people. Hundreds of years before, Saul was king of Israel. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, God gave specific instructions to Saul on what to do with the Amalekites. Verse number 3, now go and strike Amalek and devote to destruction all they have. Do not spare them. But Saul disobeyed. In verse 7, and Saul defeated the Amalekites. Verse 9, but Saul and the people spared Agag and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them. Saul didn't destroy Agag. He didn't destroy the Amalekites. And as a result, for centuries, the Amalekites persecuted the Jews. Haman was a descendant of Agag, the very man who should have been dead. The sworn enemy of the Jews. No wonder he hated the Jews. Here's the third lesson. An angry person holds on to grudges. Hundreds of years after the battle of the Amalekites, Haman had a chance to get revenge. Talk about a long time to hold on to something. You see, when you grab hold of grudge and you hold on to it, you won't let it go. It weighs you down. It is so heavy. It surrounds you. And when you're still angry with people, you try to move forward, but it just won't give. You do your best, but it weighs you down. Who are you still angry with? Is it the boss who promised you a job 3 years ago and it still hasn't happened? The ex-spouse who said those horrible things about you that should not have been said and weren't true, but you still won't let it go? You dated that guy for a year. He was going to be the one. He promised to marry you, and now he's gone. He's with someone else. Earlier I said you choose to be offended, but you also choose to hold on to grudges. You choose whether or not you hold on to this. You say, but Randy, I don't want to let go of this. You don't understand. I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm upset. The saddest part of holding on to a grudge is you'll never be able to do anything but drag this grudge into every relationship you have. Every church, every job, every ministry, every marriage, you carry it. And when you get to your future and the opportunity to grab a hold of it, you can't grab it because your hands are full. And you're holding onto this grudge. And the future and the opportunity is there for you. You need to put it down. It's time to let go. To put down the grudge. Let go of the hurt and its power over you. Quit carrying it around. Free your hands. Free your life to pick up and move forward. You won't ever move forward to the future if you won't let go of your past. Lay it down and leave it. And Haman didn't. As a result, he did what an angry person does who has a grudge. An angry person is consumed with revenge. Haman met Xerxes. He was so focused on revenge. He bribed the king with 10,000 talents of silver to kill the Jews. Now that's a ridiculous sum of money. It's about 2/3 of the annual income of the whole royal treasury. That'd be hundreds of millions, billions of dollars today. And Haman was ready to pay all that to kill the Jews. Revenge-focused people don't care what it costs to get even. They'll pay any price. The price of revenge-focused life is devastating. You think you're getting even, but the truth is you're falling behind. Is revenge costing you your marriage? Are you so angry at your parents you won't speak to them anymore? You don't take their calls? Is revenge costing you your friends, your ministry? Revenge-focused people are obsessed. It's all they think about. Anger and revenge are a burning, smoldering fire inside them that they can't put out. Centralia, Pennsylvania was a coal mining town. And around the town, several abandoned mines began to be used as trash dumps. 1967, they needed to be cleared out, so the city council hired firemen to burn down the trash and then put the fire out. And that's what they did. They burned the trash. And then they poured water on the fire. And on the surface, the flames were gone. But underground in the coal mines, the fire kept burning. A few days later, flames burst through the ground one more time. And again, the firemen came and tried to put out the fire. And on the surface, the flames were gone. But underground, the fire continued. Over time, the small trash fire became an unseen, raging inferno under the city of Centralia without the people even knowing. In his book about it, David de Kock wrote that in the mines was a world where no human could live, hotter than the planet Mercury, its atmosphere as poisonous as Saturn's. At the heart of the fire, temperatures exceeded 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Lethal clouds of carbon monoxide and other gases swirled through the rock. By 1981, the town of Centralia had to be abandoned as people were sick from the fumes. The fire spread underground to a nearby town. It cost over $42 million to relocate the people. And today, 50 years later, the fire is still burning. With no way to extinguish it, experts believe it will burn underground for at least another 250 years. Uncontrolled anger is a poisonous, burning fire inside of you. Deep beneath the surface, the need for revenge consumes you. On the outside, you smile, you laugh, you go to work, you come to church, but inside you are a hot mess. Inside, anger spreads and the need for revenge is destroying you. And then when you can't take it anymore, flames of hate and anger erupt and you spew poisonous words on people, destroying all those around you. Haman's need for revenge controlled him. If it's controlling you, you need to get control. It's time to completely deal with this anger inside of you. To replace the fire of revenge with grace and forgiveness, it's time to forgive. Haman didn't, and his need for revenge destroyed him. Put out the fire. Don't seek revenge. Your lack of forgiveness is actually destroying you, not the other person. The story speeds up from here. Esther invited Xerxes and Haman to a banquet as part of her plan to save the Jews. Excited, Haman thought he was getting honored. Chapter 5, verse 9. And Haman went out that day, joyful and glad of heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he neither rose nor trembled before him, he was filled with wrath against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself, and he went home, and he sent and brought his friends and his wife Zeresh. And Haman recounted to them the splendor of his riches, the number of his sons, all the promotions which the king had honored him, and how he had advanced to him above the officials and the servants of the king. Then Haman said, even Queen Esther, let no one but me come with the king to the feast she prepared. And tomorrow also I am invited by her together with the king. Yet all of this is worth nothing to me so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Haman went out joyful and glad of heart, and then he saw Mordecai who wouldn't bow down. He told his friends and family, I have everything, but all this is worth nothing to me. You see, angry people trade joy for bitterness. Anger robs joy from your life. Haman had everything, but it was worth nothing as long as Mordecai was alive. Hundreds of people, probably thousands of people bowed to him. He was the second highest in the kingdom. But Haman couldn't see any of that. He could only see one guy not bowing down to him. And his anger drove him to bitterness. Bitterness destroys you. Bitterness causes you to think things will never change. Bitterness makes an enemy out of everyone. Bitterness affects you physically and emotionally and spiritually. And when you keep playing over and over again what's happened in your mind, the result is bitterness. You are so focused on what is bad, you miss the good that's in front of you. You look at what you don't have instead of what you do. If bitterness is controlling you, you need to focus on what you do have. Look to what you've got, and that will help lead you to discover joy. And if you have nothing to be joyful about, be happy that Jesus has set you free. While anger robs you of joy, just know this: worship heals bitterness. Whenever you can, worship Jesus. He will give you this joy. If the world gives you trouble, know that Jesus will give you peace. If your friends, they attack you, no, Jesus will defend you. If life gives you sorrow, Jesus will give you joy. Focus on Jesus and find joy. When you and I were lost and in sin, Jesus came to us and he gave us grace. You know, I've discovered it's really hard to stay angry during worship. I mean, you come into service, and Pastor Brad and the team are playing, and you're upset, and they start singing, and you start singing. It's really hard to stay angry. Like, turn your eyes upon Jesus. This is my story. This is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. I could sing of your love forever. You see, worship takes the focus off you and puts the focus back on Jesus. Anger is an emotion. Channel that emotion in the right way. Channel it to worship Jesus. Look at what happened next. Verse 14. Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, let a gallows 50 cubits high be made, and in the morning tell the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. This idea pleased Haman, and he had the gallows made. The original plan was for all the Jews to be killed later, but Haman couldn't wait. Mordecai had to die now. So Haman went to Esther's banquet, and then he fell into the trap. After the great meal, the king offered Esther whatever she wanted. Verse 3, then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish and my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. If we'd only been sold merely as slaves, men and women, I would have been silent, for our affliction is not to be compared with the loss of the king. Then Xerxes said to Esther, who is he, and where is he who has dared to do this? And Esther said, a foe and an enemy, this wicked Haman. And four words that are completely lacking what probably happened, and Haman was terrified before the king and the queen. The king was furious. His wife was going to be killed. He stormed out of the room. Haman stayed behind to beg Esther for his life. He rushed over to her. He tripped and he fell on top of Esther. It's not going good for Haman today. At that exact moment, the king came back in and said, will he even assault the queen in my presence in my own house? And as the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Now, covered his face is a Bible way of saying Haman's a dead man. A servant told the king about the gallows had built, and the story of Haman ends very quickly. Verse 9, and the king said, hang him on that. So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. What a sad, sad story. Let me leave you with a warning from Haman's life. If you won't control your anger will destroy you. Haman died on the very gallows he had built to to kill Mordecai. Angry people set themselves up for failure. When you can't control your temper, you can't control what happens to you. You're in danger of losing your spouse, your family, your friends, your job. Now, if you struggle with anger, right now you're probably angry at me. You know, I'm about to ask you to deal with your anger problem, and that makes you angrier. Angry people are angrier when non-angry people want to talk to them about their anger. Relax. Calm down. Others of you, when I asked earlier if you were an angry person, you thought, of course not me. But the more I've talked about hurt and holding on to grudges and seeking revenge, you realize you do have an anger problem, and you need the Lord's help tonight. Would you bow your heads for just a second? Don't be an angry person. Don't lose everything because you've lost your temper. Let Jesus come into your life. Let him bring you self-control. You can't do this on your own. You need healing. You need to let go of the grudge and give up an offense. You say, Randy, that's me. I'll be up front with you. I have an anger problem, and I need help to relax and calm down. I need Jesus to come into my life and help me with this. If that's you, would you real fast, would you just raise your hand? Yeah, thanks. Thank you, guys. I know it takes a lot to admit I've got an anger problem. I can't control it. Yeah, that's you. Thank you. Jesus, I pray that for every person who lifted their hand, God, you'd help them to release the hurt that's been done to them, that you would help them let go of the grudge, that you would powerfully and cleanly and divinely work in their life. Lord, would you just bring a sense of calming of your spirit in this moment? And when they go back to the situation and they go back to the moment where they're in the place where all of this emotion erupts, that they would sense the calming presence of the Spirit of God. Lord, bring healing to their lives, I pray. In Jesus' name.